that, and this is I think, a very important question to both of you. We've had substantial turnover in the past number of years where, candidly, we haven't been able to keep a director. And one of the reasons for this is there has been substantial tension between some parts of the animal activist community and the county shelter director. I get calls all the time asking about a dog named Joe or Brutus, and that's just not my job as a county commissioner. My job is to make sure that we hire the appropriate director with the necessary skills and then have you guys deal with this. I think it's critically important that the director of the shelter be able to work closely and cooperatively with the animal activist community. So my question to both of you, I'm sure you've been briefed on everything going on in Broward. My question to both of you is, how will you work to ensure that as director, and I've reviewed your resumes, both of you I think could do it. I've checked the internet, neither of you have bad stuff written about you. I'd be happy with either of you, but I want the director to work closely with the animal activist community. Tell me how you would do this.
Yes, sure. This is not a unique problem to Broward County. And unfortunately, although I'm sure Broward County is very special in many ways, it is not a unique problem to find the shelter in this position with the community that cares so much about their animals. I have worked in another shelter that had a similar situation. And I believe that we get into these pickles because we're not communicating proactively and effectively. As the shelter director, as the expert in the field, we really need to listen to our community and listen to the concerns they have, communicate what we are mandated to do, what we are funded to do, and what we can do. And also communicate what our plans are and why, and the research and decision making under those plans. This isn't an unknown field. This is a field with a lot of research that backs it. The University of Florida has a school. UC Davis, as Austin mentioned, University of Wisconsin. There are a lot of people studying a lot of aspects of animal welfare and implementing things with some sort of basis in fact and research will really help and communicating those decisions and why we're making those decisions with the community, I think would really put a lot of worries at ease. Also being extremely transparent with the community about our challenges, that we are all in this for the right reasons. Everybody on this call is here because they care about animals, and everybody working at Broward County Animal Services, Broward County Animal Adoption Center, is there because they love animals. We don't choose this career because we don't love animals and that we don't love our people and we don't want to keep them together and get them into good homes. So really opening up those lines of communication. In the past, the solutions to that I found are having regular town halls, regular reporting of our data, of our plans, of our progress towards strategic plans, and really keeping those lines of communication open. Also, listening to the concerns of the community. They might not have been things that I've thought of before. You might know about something in a neighborhood that I don't know. Broward will be new to me. And you might have solutions that I haven't thought of, even being tapped into national organizations and solutions that have been tried across the country. So I think, like any problem solving, I think it starts with communication and probably ends with communication.
Thank you, Emily. Austin?
Well, this is why it's hard to go second, because everything she said was fabulous. So the only thing that I would add to that, because what she said was absolutely spot on, is listening. An open door policy. So I have been a proponent of an open door policy at every shelter that I've worked at, and I encourage people to come and talk to me if they have questions. And it's better to come talk to me right to the source than to have rumors or worries. So I would encourage anybody with questions to come talk to me. So that is one thing. And then another thing is to make sure that we're all speaking the same language and we all have the same definitions. So sometimes people have misconceptions about what no-kill means, the true definition of no-kill. And sometimes if a community hears that a shelter is no-kill and then they hear that a dog was euthanized or a cat was euthanized, they feel like they're being lied to. When in fact, being no-kill does not mean that an animal would never be euthanized. It means that no healthy or treatable animal is euthanized. So, and I'm so pleased with Broward's numbers that they actually achieved the live release rate, the 90%. They actually exceeded that in fiscal year 19 for dogs with 92% live release rate, and for cats at 80, which is extremely great from where they've been in years past. So I think really speaking the same language, making sure that we are transparent, like Emily said, and we listen and we communicate. We're all in this together. We all want the same things. So really just being in this as partners rather than adversaries.
Thank you, Austin. Monique, may we have a question from the next commissioner?
Commissioner Rich, you're unmuted. You can go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. And welcome to Broward County. Sorry I had to come here in the middle of the pandemic, but we're happy to. Well, maybe you're not here. Yes, you are, because I think you went to the shelter today, right? Yeah. So I have kind of a long history of being involved with animal issues. I was in the legislature for 12 years and spent some time working on legislation dealing with facets of animal welfare, including a license plate that hopefully whoever gets this job will get the license, the animal friend license plate. The money goes to spay neuter programs, nonprofits all over the state of Florida. But I'd like to, I know Emily mentioned about the UF Maddie's program at the University of Florida. So I'm wondering, I have a couple of questions about, I don't know if you both had an opportunity to read the assessment that was done by the University of Florida. I'm seeing you're both shaking your heads, yes. Okay, so one of the things that was kind of important to me as I read it, I felt it was very well balanced because it talked about the many important positive accomplishments of the shelter and the community, while also moving on to address, obviously, systems and processes that should be updated. So one of the areas that they really focus on is this issue of moving from a kind of a shelter-based transitioning, basically, from a traditional shelter-centric animal welfare system to creating a community-centric animal welfare system. And I think that's important here because of the fact that part of our problem is overpopulation, too many animals in the shelter, and obviously that focuses on a different way. So I'm wondering if you could both comment on that, and if you've worked on any kind of systems like that, or if if it's something, a vision you would have if you were here. And the second part of the question would be to talk about a managed admissions system that would help us achieve that kind of a goal of this community-centric shelter.
Austin, would you like to start first on that one?
Sure. Well, I have read the assessment and it was very good. And what I loved about it, like you said, is it did celebrate the great accomplishments of Broward County so far. I mean, and there are many. So the community-centric approach I love, and the fear-free sheltering and the shelter playbook talks a lot about that. And I think one of the main areas that they work on in this community-centric is working directly with the animal control officers and involving them more carrot and less stick. So trying programs that would decrease the number of stray animals that come in. So the majority of the animals that are coming into Broward County are strays. Owner surrenders are very few of their numbers. So working to decrease the number of strays coming in, and doing that by having the animal control officers try some of the innovative programs that are out there. One of them is the knock 3 times. So not to say that this is a program that they should do, but it's just an example of what's out there. So the knock 3 times is that when they find a stray dog at a house, they go to 3 houses on each side and knock on the door to ask them if they know who the dog is. So the job doesn't stop for the animal control officer when they pick up the dog. It actually starts. And so they would then knock on 3 doors on each side to try and find the owners, to eliminate them from even coming in. And giving the animal control officers who are out in the community tools that they can help to mitigate the animals coming in. And that would be like the doghouse program that Broward has, providing more dog houses, if that would help the dogs to stay at home. Resources to help build fences. That was an example that a staff member gave me today of something they would love to do more of. So there's lots of opportunities to get the community involved and to help lower the intake through those community-centric programs. So the second part of the question is about managed intake. That's something that I believe the shelter is already doing, and managed intake is for owner surrenders, which, as I said, very few of the animals coming into Broward are owner surrendered. And they already are doing managed intake to the effect that they are making an appointment for the owner to surrender their animal. And then during the time that they're waiting for the appointment, they encourage the owner to reach out and to try find solutions that they would not have to bring their animal in. That would, finding a new place to live, moving, completing the moving process. Maybe a friend of theirs could adopt their pet. So whatever it takes during that time while they're waiting for their appointment to come in would then eliminate the need for the animal to come in. And also, by using the appointment system, you are making sure that when the animal comes in, that there is adequate space at the shelter, that you're not going over capacity and running into too many animals.
Thank you.
Thank you, Austin. Emily?
Sure. Yes, community-centered sheltering is such a great innovation, and it has really taken off in the time of COVID because so many people came out of the woodwork when they were working from home to foster animals and to help rehome animals in their community. I think it's so important, and I've been sitting on some of the working groups for Humane Animal Support Services, which is really championing this model out of Austin Pets Alive. I see some really big opportunities in Broward to really move the needle in terms of the number of animals taken into the shelter who are not happy in the shelter, right? Nobody wants to live in a kennel or a cage. And then the length of time they're spending in a kennel or a cage. By really harnessing foster in a bigger way, both our traditional foster methods, but expanding those for our large dogs who really, when they spend a long time in the shelter, have less of a chance of leaving in a positive way, and for our animals who are found stray. So that gets into the managed admission zone of people finding stray dogs or calling in stray dogs, may have the opportunity to foster them for a short time or for a slightly longer time within their community. And that gives them such a higher opportunity to find their way home, such a higher chance of finding their way home. We know this with cats, that cats have almost no possibility of being reclaimed once they're taken to the shelter. It's a 2% national average of return to owner for cats. 22%, I think, is the return to owner rates for dogs in Broward County. I think we can really increase that by keeping animals in their neighborhoods, by championing our community members who find them to foster them overnight or to knock on 3 doors, like Austin said, even if they're not an officer. Anyway, we can keep animals in their homes that they already have, as long as that home is safe and appropriate. The other thing that is clearly a big impact on shelter capacity is kitten season. So I know we already have that sort of Good Samaritan foster program here in Broward for people who found neonatal kittens. They get a kitten kit, they go back home as long as they feel like they can wake up every 3 hours to feed a kitten. I've run programs like that before and find them very, very successful, both for staff morale as work gets very hard with so many tiny kittens, and for the lives of those cats. It's so much better for them to be in a home. And we can also get even a little bit more upstream of that for kittens who are really being kidnapped from their moms by managing those admissions, by providing more information to the community to say, wait for mom. These kittens have a better chance if they're eating from her than they are being bottle fed. It's fun to bottle feed kittens. Everybody should do it 2 or 3 times in their lives, or 2 or 3 times every summer. But mom is really the best source of food, and she's probably an awesome mom. So there are all sorts of ways that we can really partner with our community to save a lot more lives.
Thank you, Emily. Monique, do we have another commissioner who has a question?
Yes, we have 2 additional commissioners with questions, Commissioner Bogan and Commissioner Fisher. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute Commissioner Bogan. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Hi, ladies. My name is Mark Bogan. I'm one of the commissioners. Welcome and appreciate your time. And I wanted to first say, you have very impressive resumes, and so I wanted to ask a question. I'm going to try to make sure I ask it the right way. I could probably phrase it correctly, but let's give it a shot. I do not know how to run an animal shelter, but I've been told by people that run it, there's certain standards and protocols from the time before you open in the morning to cleaning the kennels to when you close. Are you both, I'd like to each one of you just touch on, are you familiar with the standards and protocols and just operating? I looked at your resume, you've done so many different things, but I wanted to just touch on your experience from the moment you get there in the morning till the moment you leave in the evening. Are you familiar with the standards and protocols that are common practices in operating animal shelters?
Sure.
Emily?
Sure I am. I've scooped poop with the best of them. I think there are some good publications on this that give good general guidelines. I find that the best Bible is the AVMA guidelines for standards of care in shelters. But I recently got my certified animal welfare administrator certification, which involves studying a lot of that and being very aware of what the best practices are currently, because it might have been 5 or 6 years ago since I was last trained on a new shelter cleaning product. But there are standards. Luckily, they're pretty basic. Have hours where the kennels are cleaned before staff comes, follow circadian rhythms of animals. These are things that you know from the reporting that you've gotten from University of Florida and from the internal county auditors. And those things are challenging to follow if there are not good SOPs in place, but once there are good processes in place, they happen without even question. And it's identifying where those breakdowns might be, because they happen at every organization where somebody found a shortcut or something broke once, and we've been doing this other way last few months, and it seems fine, but it's really not. And that's all about making sure that the whole staff understands why certain decisions are made, including things like how the chemicals work and how a vaccine works and why we actually do the things we do.
Okay. Austin, can I hear from you?
Sure. So just to add to what Emily said, so the kind of the Bible is the shelter guidelines, Association of Shelter Veterinarians. So that book is the Bible. It's got everything from feeding, transports, record keeping, everything that you would need to know. And so that's kind of the basic. And that came out, I believe, in 2010. So that's been around for a while. So I'm very, very familiar with that. And in addition to that, I'm so excited about the new stuff coming out. Like I said, from UC Davis and from Maddie's shelter program. So the fact that these really great, highly respected organizations are doing research that take the guesswork out of starting new programs, and it takes the fear out of it, so that you can start fee-waived adoptions with the confidence, because the ASPCA has done the research and other organizations have implemented and seen the same results as projected. So I love implementing those kinds of programs, because you can show the research to the staff and to the community and say, we're not making this up, this is real, and here's what we can expect. And then when it happens, it's a celebration. And because animals are saved, the shelter runs more smoothly, animals are out quicker, whatever the change was, it's well researched. And so not only am I familiar with the standards, but also the new and up and coming programming that's out there.
It's just a quick follow-up. So I met with a lady who ran a shelter for 40 years, and she really described it as a business. You need to know from the moment you get there what things need to be done, and the person running the shelter needs to be on the floor, not in their office all day, and they need to make sure the volunteers are doing what they're doing, the staff's doing what they're doing, things are done, coordinated, executed in a timely manner, and I never thought of it that way until I spoke to somebody in the business in that field. But and that's what I personally, as my own opinion, that's what I felt was a little lacking in the previous person, and executing from the beginning of the morning till the end of the day the standards and protocols. And that's kind of what I kind of wanted to maybe focus. That's why I was focusing on that. Mm-hmm. But anyway, thank you for your time.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Austin and Emily. Monique, do we have another commissioner with a question?
Yes, Commissioner Fisher, go ahead. Commissioner Fisher, you're unmuted. You can go ahead.
Monique, I believe that you have unmuted Commissioner Furr. And at some point after
I'm sorry.
after Commissioner Fisher speaks, I'd like to speak as well. Commissioner Furr, it's okay if you ask your question now, and then Monique, you'll find Commissioner Furr under Lamar Fisher.
Yes, I got it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, welcome, ladies. I also have had a chance to read your resume, and I appreciate you being interested in Broward County. Thank you very much. The one thing I'm interested in is if you had a chance to read the audit that our auditor did, in particular having to do with staffing, and what your thoughts were about that.
Let's see who's next. My bad. Austin, you're next, if you would.
Look, I got messed up. You thought you were, and I got messed up with the audit. So yes, I have read the audit, and the staffing issues was a large section of the audit. And while I think that there is some opportunity to increase staff, I think that some of the staff could be maybe reorganized and used differently. So I don't know that all the staff are required that was listed in the audit. There's several areas. I think the veterinary clinic is an area. I'm a strong supporter of spay-neuter. So the fact that the Broward County is unable to do public spay-neuter at this point just hurts my heart. So, so I would love for, someday to be doing public spay-neuter at Broward. I feel like that's a long-term solution to really making some lasting change. So I think that the opportunity to increase veterinary staff would be a first step that would really make a big impact on not only the animals in the shelter, but animals in the community, and hopefully limiting the number that's coming in.
Have you noticed that there's been a shortage? Is there a shortage around the country of people that can do that?
Yes.
Because it seems like we were wanting to do that, but we were having a hard time finding some personnel. Am I right on? Is that?
Yes, you are right. It's very difficult, and it's a common problem around the country of finding veterinarians that want to focus on spay-neuter. The Humane Alliance recently partnered, I believe, with the ASPCA. So hopefully we can get more veterinarians inspired to take this path and to help in this crusade of spaying and neutering. But it is very, very difficult. And it's hard work. I was just explaining earlier that, spaying a large female pit bull is physically very challenging, and it's fatiguing for their veterinarians' wrists, and it's hard work. So, finding somebody that's is interested and physically able to do the strenuous work of spay neuter.
Is it, and I'm going to ask the same thing of you, Emily, if you don't mind, okay? Same questions. Is one of the issues salary, or is it specialization? Or is it a desire to be only working on that, where some veterinarians may want to enjoy the variety of things that happen in the animal field?
Well, I think you touched on all the reasons. I think that, they go to school for a lot of years and they learn a lot of interesting things, and to limit their career to spay neuter takes the right kind of person. And so I don't think that's for everyone. I think we are fortunate that some young people that started off volunteering in shelters are now old enough to be graduating from veterinary school. So I'm hoping that those folks come back to sheltering and help with spay neuter. So I think it's everything. It's salary, of course. You can attract a lot of people with salary, but it's also use of their skills.
Okay, thank you. Emily, same thing. Have you had a chance to read the audit and your thoughts on the staffing?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that the audit's very interesting, very, very thorough, very heavy. But I agree with the problems that they reference. The solution being to add more staffing. I don't know that that's necessary when we're talking about community-centric sheltering, when we're talking about managing admissions and getting ahead of problems. The increase in enrichment and kennel support staff may not be necessary. I do think with having fewer animals come into the shelter, and those of them that do have a shorter length of stay and more opportunities for outcomes that are quick, that the number of employees dedicated to their daily care will really go down, and we can start shifting those staff to those front of house, and it becomes a snowball effect of, oh, these people can intervene and help more people keep their animals. It frees up more funds to put in solving the community's problems rather than cleaning up an already broken household, because these are really pets that have gotten away from their home. If you think of it as if this is a child, I would rather have that child get back to their original parents than live in an orphanage for almost a year, as in the case of some of these animals, or to get to a foster home really, really quickly. And all of those require less in-house care. They might require more medical care, more quick surgeries, if we're turning over animals to go back into their community faster. And so getting to your questioning about veterinary care, I think that, as Austin said, there are more people going into high volume, high quality spay neuter. I know that it is a skill that some people find really, really fun. It is very competitive, though. So I think making the shelter a place that would attract a competitive candidate when veterinarians are so in demand is going to be a long-term goal.
Okay. And I hear what you're both saying about staffing. Do you think that if you're, and you both seem to be in favor of a community-centric philosophy, would you be considering putting staffing on that kind of outreach and development of that? Is that where you would see staffing being more effective?
Commissioner Furr, I hope you'll forgive me for interrupting, but because of the time, we have to keep one question to each commissioner.
Okay. Oh, that's fine. That's
I
fine.
do apologize for that. And,
Thank you, ladies. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Emily. Thank you, Austin. Monique, we have time for one more quick question from our commissioners, if you know any.
Yes, Commissioner Fisher, I apologize. You are now unmuted. Go ahead.
Thank you, Monique, for hosting this, and also thank you, Grace, for your leadership and being part of this and being my appointee at this particular time on the committee. So thank you so much. And Austin and Emily, again, thank you for wanting to be able to be part of our Broward County family when it comes especially to our animal care. And I think my colleagues have actually answered and asked those questions. You've answered them. You know, I really want to stress the volunteers issue because I've been on the commission now 2 years, and that seems to be just an incredible issue that we want to make sure that the transparency and the communication is there for our volunteers, and looking to you for your expertise and suggestions. And I asked you, whoever is selected, to not be shy, to talk to our committee and talk to our administration on what you need and where you feel that that is best suited to take care of our pet families. I guess my main question is, when you visited our animal care facility, what was your impression?
Emily, I believe you're up. You're next.
Yes, I believe the facility is quite beautiful and really will provide for humane care for the animals. The dog runs are double-sided. There's room for enrichment. The cat portals have been ordered so that the cat cages will be double-sided as well, which is a standard for care. I think that it is welcoming to the public, which is really important. Many shelters are not, do not feel physically welcoming to the public, so that's very helpful. I know that parking is a concern, so something to look at and evaluate that the people who want to get in have a place to park when they come. But I actually think the facility looks quite good, and with the idea of we keep harping on the community-centric sheltering, but with the idea of keeping more animals in their homes and the ones who come into the shelter staying less amount of time, the shelter is really suited for the population that you're serving. Broward is not alone in getting into the situation that you were in last year of animals coming in without a pathway planned for them, without a particular place to go. And if you don't mind, Austin, I will loop back to Commissioner Furr's last question in terms of staffing for that community-centric sheltering. There's already staff in place for a lot of those programs. There's already a foster coordinator. CSRs already go through foster applications. We're already making appointments for surrenders. It is about finding the little space to increase the time that they can spend on those things. And every animal we keep out of the shelter frees up some time back of house staff to continue to push that proactive problem solving with the staff that we have.
Thank you, Emily. Austin?
Yeah, so my impressions were very similar. I was very impressed. The facility was very clean, very bright, welcoming. So I really was very impressed. I like the cat rooms, the cat colonies in the front. I love the double kennels for the dogs, and I'm so glad, like Emily said, that the portals are ordered and that they will soon be in for the cats. I think that will be a dramatic improvement for the well-being of the cats that are at the shelter. So I was really impressed, and and I see the things in the audit and in the assessment that are just little tweaks here and there that might help the animals with their enjoy their stay a little more. But other than that, I was very impressed. And it's unfortunate that the water table is so high in Florida and that you got the water issue out there in the off-leash area. That's really unfortunate because I think that's a valuable resource for the dogs. But I hear that maybe there's something going to be done about that. So that would be fabulous. But other than that, I was very impressed.
Okay, thank you, Austin and Emily. I think we because of time, we now need to go over, and I need to, if you would, I'm going to ask you questions that were provided by the public. These are not my questions. These are questions that came from many different people in Broward County that have a lot of experience with the shelter and with the animal issues throughout the county, not just within the shelter. So without further ado, I'm going to ask the first question. And as I believe we had discussed earlier, Emily will start, and then we'll alternate back and forth. So here's the question. From what you have learned about the Animal Care Division, what are the 3 most pressing issues at the shelter, and how does your experience qualify you to address them? And Emily, you can take a few minutes to think, because just so everybody knows, these candidates have not seen these questions in advance. This is the first time they're hearing them. So let's give them a chance to think before they answer. And if you don't understand the question, just ask me. So I'm going to mute now. Emily, you go ahead when you're ready.
Okay. Well, I can jump in with number 1 right away. It is communication and community relations. Shelters, especially shelters within governments, are not funded to do the work that the community wants them to do. We're funded to keep animals for their stray hold, and historically we were just here to make sure that rabies wasn't on the street, and that meant the euthanasia of a lot of dogs, and the tenor of animal welfare in the country has changed from that funding structure. So we really need volunteers to make up the difference. And we need good relationships with our volunteers. We need respectful relationships with our volunteers. We need honest and open and transparent relationships with our volunteers. I've worked in shelters where volunteers do all the medical work, the examinations, the vaccinations, anything that doesn't need a license, all of the daily treatments. And that's very successful, but it requires a very high level of trust that goes both ways. And I think rebuilding that trust is going to be really key to being able to make any progress in Broward. And in terms of the other 2 issues, the one that I see off the top of my head is length of stay for large dogs. Length of stay for large dogs is quite long. I don't believe it's humane to live in a kennel for a year. And I think that there are some solutions to that. The dogs that are in the shelter now really pushing for foster options if an adoptive home is not available right now. I think there are adopters in the community that have not been targeted. Perhaps neighborhoods that dogs come from routinely have places open in their homes for dogs to go to, and really should have some presence from the shelter in their communities to talk about spay and neuter, to talk about fence repair, to talk about free roaming dogs and licensing their dogs and microchipping their dogs so the next time one gets out, they can get back. And I think that in future, those large dogs, we need to find some other solutions for them rather than coming into the shelter. Community foster in the neighborhood that they were found, the Knock 3 Times program that Austin was talking about, finding ways to get them home quicker to the original home that they were from. That should be the first solution, and then rehoming them if there are no other options. A third opportunity. I had a big list of things, but I think it is along the lines of both of those things. It is getting the shelter operating within its capacity for care. And that is a big kind of woolly problem that it's very challenging for shelters to define their capacity for care. We know how many kennels there are in the shelter. We know how many staff there are in the shelter, but really determining how many adoptions there are per day, how much enrichment each animal needs, how much medical care each animal needs, to really hone in on what the population of Broward needs in terms of animal sheltering, and that we are not exceeding that capacity for care, because that is when staff burns out. That is when we see situations that are not humane for the animals and really need to correct them. So right now, I think the population is at a pretty good level. I think we could do even better.
Thank you, Emily. Austin?
Yeah, so I will piggyback on that. And I think the three most pressing issues are, one is the volunteer program. I think it's kind of gone astray somehow, and pulling that back in and restoring the trust, the transparency, the camaraderie, the teamwork, to have the volunteers and the staff working side by side and going in the same direction. So I have experience helping volunteer programs that have been struggling with similar issues. I have experience working through those and getting them back on track. So I think that's the number one pressing issue, just getting more hands to help the animals. The second issue is cats. I think more cats are coming into Broward than dogs. Their live release rate is not up to where the dogs are yet. And there are some really great programs that are proven to really have big impacts. You know, I am so pleased that Broward doesn't have a stray hold for cats. That is so progressive, and I love it. And that should be shouted from the mountaintops, because that is awesome. You could be leaders around the country just in that one fact. So I love that, and I love your Return to Field program. Right now it's limited to feral cats, and I would love to see that move towards the tame community cats as well. I think that could transform cats immediately at the shelter. So that's I think is the second biggest issue for me. And then the third is I know a pie in the sky for right now, but I think it needs to be on the horizon. I've said it before, is spay neuter. Spay neuter for the public. Free spay neuter for feral cats. You know, I don't want to say that this is what the county should do and this is what I would do when I got here, but this is what is always going to be in the back of my head, that this is what needs to happen. And I will fight for it every opportunity I get, is to get more spay neuter done for the public and make it easy, make it inexpensive for them, if not free, and to really target the overrepresented populations in the shelter, which are pit bulls and cats. You know, we have very limited resources for spay neuter, and let's target them on the overrepresented and just offer those services to pit bulls and cats. And that's where we'll have the biggest impact. So those are my three top issues.
Thank you, Austin. Thank you, Emily. Now here comes the next question. Austin will start. And by the way, if you forget what the question was, feel free to ask me to tell it to you again. So here's the second question. What is your, and some of you bear in mind that you've answered a lot of questions so far. So these questions you may have already answered. So you might want to say, oh, well, I answered that, but you know, maybe you want to say something else. You know what I mean? So, because I don't have time to edit all these questions as you guys answer. So here's the next question. What is your concept of no kill? And what is your plan to accomplish and maintain no kill? Austin, if you would.
So I go by the definition of best friends, who were kind of the leaders of the no-kill movement. And no-kill is no healthy or treatable animal will be euthanized, and that you achieve a live release rate of 90% or more. So that is what I consider no-kill. And to pare that down even further, that the euthanasia should be limited to aggressive, unsafe dogs or animals that are so ill there's no hope that they can be saved. So that's my definition of no kill, which again needs to be shared with the community so that they don't feel lied to when they hear that an animal was euthanized at the shelter. So, how do you maintain that? Well, you're almost there, right? You're 92% for dogs and 80% for cats. So you're so close. So I think you need to celebrate where you are right now. You're so close to having a complete 90% live release rate combined for both dogs and cats. So I think it's perfectly sustainable, especially if some of these more progressive, programs are initiated so that you reduce the number of animals at the shelter.
Yes, I feel similarly that no kill is about making sure animals who are not suffering get a chance to leave alive. And suffering extends to animals who are mentally unfit to go back in the community because of how uncomfortable they are being around people and maybe aggressive and injure a human being or another dog. But that is quite rare in my experience. That's fairly rare. So in terms of implementing and sustaining no kill, no kill also comes with some tenets and programming to help it along its ways. Things like return to field program, things like behavioral intervention for dogs. And I think we move stepwise by implementing a lot of the progressive programming that Austin's referred to, that we implement these things and suddenly, voila, we're over 90% because we've given every subpopulation of the shelter a chance. And that's really how it's worked where I've worked in the past. My last shelter at Pasadena Humane, we had no goal of no kill. I just saw that some programs weren't working and started implementing things like have been implemented in Broward, things like fosters we have fosters waiting before the kittens arrive, things like that. Things like you have the kitten kits to go home with people who found kittens. Proactively making our transfer relationships with rescue partners before we get in medical or behaviorally concerning dogs. And getting all those things lined up, it's almost magic how life-saving happens, rather than in my experience, putting the 90% as the goal and then trying to claw our way to it, because that's when it might seem okay to turn the shelter into a sanctuary site.
Thank you. Okay, next. The next question is, and I'm unmuted, good. Broward County has a large feral cat population. What is your vision of a successful TNR program that will humanely reduce the population of feral cats? That was a very popular question, by the way. I wordsmithed it. I wordsmithed everybody's question together, and I got that. So let's see, who's next? Emily.
Okay, so with the resources that we have to be smart about our TNR, and that comes with data. And thankfully, the shelter uses Chameleon, which has mapping associated with it, the shelter software that the shelter uses. And we can search by zip code where kittens are coming in summer, where hit by car cats are coming from, and really target our resources towards those zip codes so that we can collapse colonies where they are causing the most trouble. So I think the guideline is that about 80% of cats in a colony need to be altered in order for the colony to start stabilizing and eventually collapse down over the years, and to maintain a level of health as well. When colonies get overpopulated, that is when disease starts to spread or animals start to roam away from that colony and cause nuisance issues for neighbors. So I think really strategically targeting zip codes and prioritizing those places where we're getting the most concerning reports from the community and the most intake, especially of underage kittens, because those kittens are probably being abandoned because their mothers move, and that's a very stressful situation for them. And those are the places in the most need.
Thank you, Emily. Austin?
Yeah, so piggyback on that. So absolutely targeting the areas. But I think one of the ways to really ramp up TNR is to really partner with the trappers. I don't know how many people have trapped before, but it's a lot of work. And the trappers are such hardworking, dedicated community members that however the shelter can partner with them. I mean, do you need a place to store your traps? Do you need a place to clean your traps? Do you need some canned food? What do you need to help make your trapping a little easier? Because I know personally how hard it is. So, I would love to see, a more direct partnership with the trapping community and really work to target and really clean up area by area by area. And of course, I'm going to give another plug for spay neuter. If we could provide free spay neuter to all the feral cats, that's a goal.
Thank you, Austin. Okay, I'm going to go to the next question, and Emily will address this first. What is the largest budget and number of staff members you have managed, and for how long? What services were these staff providing? So I'll say it again. What is the largest budget and number of staff members you have managed, and for how long? What services were these staff providing?
My budget has been kind of the same at every shelter I've been at. So starting in San Francisco, I had a $3 million budget just for adoptions. And then moved on to a $3 million budget for program operations and $3 million for operations at Pasadena Humane. The largest staff I've operated, I've managed, I don't operate my staff. The largest staff I've managed was probably around 50, flexing to maybe even 80 seasonally in San Francisco. We had very large adoption centers and a very large offsite adoption event. I recommend you all go to the Macy's Holiday Windows if you're ever in San Francisco during the holidays. And the smallest staff I've had on that budget is 4, and all of the budget went to community intervention rather than staff payroll. But is that your full question? Sorry, I might have drifted.
Yeah. I'll say it again. What is the largest budget and number of staff members you have managed, and for how long, and what services were these staff providing? So if you want to say anything more.
So from San Francisco, it was one department. Adoptions was the same budget size as all of my operations currently, or most recently, and a huge staff for just adoptions. Adoptions in San Francisco included outreach and animal care at some locations. And currently the breadth of programs that I oversee are almost anything that's involved at Broward. So ACOs, kitten nursery, animal care, foster, transfer, the list goes on, all the things that happen in an animal shelter.
All right, very good. Thank you, Emily. Austin, do you want me to ask you the question again?
I think I got it. So I think the biggest budget was at San Diego Humane Society. I ran the Oceanside campus, and that budget was about $4.8 million. we had 67 staff. And the staff that I was responsible for was animal care, adoptions, guest services, licensing, and behavior, and euthanasia. So those were the teams that reported to me. And I did that, I believe I was there for about 3 years. So that was the biggest.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, let's go to the next question, which Emily will, wait, Austin's going to start answering the next question. You're first, Austin. Here's the next question. How are you going to improve enrichment programs for dogs and cats? That assumes that you know what the enrichment programs now are. For example, will you follow up on the music program that was provided to John Vieira? And how would you track the status of dog and cat enrichment programs?
Okay. So today I noticed that there is a socialization or dog walking board that they use right now so that they are tracking to make sure that every dog is walked once a day. I'm very familiar with those boards. The boards that I've used are a little bit more extensive. It does walks, play times, potty breaks, and cuddle time. So it tracks a little bit more to make sure that there's no animal forgotten. So I would encourage that the monitoring boards are used more. I don't know about the music program, but at Humane Society of Sedona, where I just work, we did play music for the animals during business hours, very light. We had special dog tapes and cat tapes that the animals were supposed to like. So I do think that's a nice distraction for the animals. Some other enrichment that I would love to start. Again, I don't know that I could do these, but these are things that I have done in the past. One are the treat pails, having treats hanging on the doors of all the dog kennels. That really helps the dogs to reduce the barking and helps them anticipate and enjoy when visitors come by because they get a treat. Toys for all the animals, give them something to chew on and toys. Something for cats is less enrichment and more stress reduction. So quiet time for cats and regular schedules so they know when to expect that people are going to be coming in. A place to hide for all the cats. Every cat should have a place to hide, even if it's a paper bag that they can get into and hide. I think that is so imperative for cats. UC Davis did a great study. I think it was a small study about REM sleep, that cats in the shelter are able to reach REM sleep faster if they have 3 inches of cat bedding. So that's something I did in Sedona. Every cat got 3 inches of cat bedding and they slept like babies. So I'm very much into making the animals as comfortable as possible, because if they're comfortable, their stress level's down and they stay healthy. And if they're healthy, we can get them out as fast as possible.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Emily, would you like me to read the question again?
I'll try to answer and then maybe go off track and ask you to read it again in like 30 seconds.
Okay.
So I love enrichment programs. I think that it's such a great way to get a lot of different kinds of people involved. There are lots of enrichment programs that children in the community can even be involved in. And, but with the caveat, before I kind of answer the question, that the best place for an animal is in the home. So I don't want to spend all the time making their stay in the shelter comfortable when the stay shouldn't have happened at all, or it should be extremely short. So just with that caveat, I think a music program is great to rotate CDs, uses through a dog's ear, through a cat's ear, music programs. I also think rotating through all of the senses, I've had some good success with doing different scent, tastes, audio, texture, work, rotating those day by day. And then I know that you guys have gotten a little bit into having dog play groups, which I think allowing animals to exhibit species appropriate behavior, social behavior, is really important, and a skill that some dogs and cats can easily lose when they're isolated from each other in the shelter. So I think those are all really necessary. And really necessary to develop as we are more successful at keeping quote unquote easy animals out of the shelter, and making sure that the ones that do come in really do need to be there. And those are often those animals with extended medical lengths of stay, and we really need to be very creative about our enrichment opportunities. And it goes back to repairing relationships with volunteers and rebuilding the volunteer programs really strongly, because those are enrichment programs are really things that volunteers can do and be so essential to getting done.
Great, thank you. I just want to give you a chance to answer a question that was also in part of these questions I was reading. How would you track the status of the program?
To track the status of the program, the shelter uses Chameleon, which has a great behavior module that can be tailored to input anything, almost anything. So to make sure what enrichment animals are getting, to have an iPad or computer readily accessible to check off that somebody's gotten that every day, or to do it on their kennel card and data entry it at the end of the day. I do think it's necessary to get records into the animal's individual record, digital records, so that we can look back at those. I do like the whiteboards for easy communication between staff, but I do want a permanent record of things happening.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you. Okay, Emily, you're going to take this next question first. In the past, many of the dogs at the shelter that were deemed by shelter staff to be too dangerous for adoption or rescue have gone on to live happy lives as beloved family pets. Will you be hiring a qualified animal behavior specialist to prevent this from happening again?
So this is a big challenge, that dogs behave in the shelter and cats behave in the shelter very differently than they do out of the shelter. And as shelter staff, we often only see them in the shelter, and that's unfortunate. That means we really need to work on our ability to collect data on animals from outside the shelter. So if they're surrendered by their owner, we need to get a full profile of that animal and how they behaved before they got to the shelter. If they were found by a good Samaritan, how did they behave in the car on the ride to the shelter? Even the officer who picked them up, how did that work? What did the caller say about the animal's behavior before they came to the shelter? And if they go on foster trips, field trips, day dates, I think you have a lunch buddies program, all of those things, we need to record how those animals behaved, because it's very easy to see an animal a dog generally, who's got real barrier reactivity problems, to see them at the barrier every day when their kennel's being cleaned and think that that dog would not be safe in the community, when that dog might just be safe if you removed the barrier. So I think all of those things, and making sure that all staff, not just behavior and enrichment staff, all staff understand the signs of fear, anxiety, and stress. And I don't know how many of the volunteers on this call have had the chance to take the fear-free sheltering training. It's really great and provides a really good numbering system for the dog or cat's behavior in the shelter in different scenarios. So that can also help us track how the dog's feeling and behaving in the shelter in an objective way, with the clear boundary that is how they're behaving because they are in this artificial shelter environment. So it might mean that we take a few more gambles on putting animals into foster homes because, as we've said, so many foster homes have come out of the woodwork in the last few months that we can see how they do overnight in a home instead of watching them slowly deteriorate in a kennel, because we don't think that most homes are safe for them because we've put on labels such as dog aggressive or no children and those sorts of things that may only be true within the stress of the shelter. Was there another component to that question that I missed?
Will you if you're a director, would you want to, right now we don't have any qualified animal behavior specialists working at the shelter. Would you request or hire a qualified animal behavior specialist to help train the staff and volunteers, as well as assess the dogs on a regular basis at the
So that is something that I couldn't assess adequately with a tour today of how staff is labeling dogs. And I think I'd really have to get into it to see if it were easy to use free online tools such as Free or Free Sheltering to train staff and to kind of shift our culture a little bit to understanding that this is shelter specific behavior, a part that is separate from community specific behavior, and to collect those notes and to look at the holistic picture of the animal. Or if really we do have animals who need on-site training and behavior modification, we really need to work on giving them different life skills that really do require somebody with some advanced dog behavior knowledge and dog training knowledge to give them a better chance to be placed. I think that most of our problems can be solved with the former, but that may leave a population of animals that does require the latter.
Okay, thank you. Very good. Austin, shall I read it again? In the past, many of the dogs at the shelter were deemed by shelter staff to be too dangerous for adoption or rescue, but they were eventually rescued and adopted, many of these, and they went on to live happy lives as beloved family pets. The shelter currently does not have a qualified animal behavioral specialist. Would you be willing to hire one to prevent this from happening anymore? Austin.
Sure. So let me first say that I don't think even with a certified behavioralist that we can say with any certainty that we know how an animal is going to act at home. I think that using all of the data and to ensure that we're collecting data from multiple sources, from the dog walkers, from at intake, from, like Emily said, before intake, on the ride in, from the person that found them. If we collect all that information and try and build a picture about the animal, we have to do the best that we can using all the tools that we can. And will we get it wrong? Yes. Have we adopted animals out that we thought were safe and weren't? Yes. And the same is for both ways. So, I think that it's good to remember that everybody's doing the best that they can and to use all the resources that they can to make the best decisions. And would I hire an animal behavioralist? I have worked with dog trainers at San Diego Humane Society. They had a behavior team, and we had a certified dog trainer on our team. And she was a wonderful asset to have to help determine, like Emily was saying, that the animals that are more fear-based rather than aggressive based. So a good dog trainer was really valuable in helping to determine that. Again, is it a must? I don't know. I don't know whether I would agree to hire them or not. I would have to have more information.
You're muted, Grace.
Thank you so much. I told you I wasn't perfect. Commissioner Ryan's office has asked me to ask you these questions, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. There are 3 of them. He says that upon reviewing your resumes, you both seem to have a significant amount of experience in this field, the field he's about to question you about. Based on that, please briefly answer the following, and we mean briefly here. How many years of managerial executive experience have you had in this industry, the shelter industry? And how did those years prepare you for the job you are seeking? And how do you manage conflict? Provide examples. I'll be happy to reread these questions for you again. Austin, I'm going to put you on the spot if I could. And if you would, when you're ready, answer the questions. And I'll be happy to repeat them.
Okay, so I think I got most of it. So I have been, like I said in my introduction, in animal welfare for over 25 years. 15 of those years have been serving as an executive director at various shelters. So I have a lot of experience, kind of higher level in overarching of the programming that's involved in an animal shelter. Maybe you could repeat the rest of the question. Yes.
Sorry about that. I had to unmute. So I think you answered the first one. How many years of managerial executive experience have you had in this industry? How did those years prepare you for the job you are seeking? And then how do you manage conflict? Provide examples.
How did it prepare? Well,
okay. So how did it prepare you for the job you are seeking? Let's work on that one.
Right. Well, it's just cumulative, right? So we keep learning more, and I love learning about new procedures and new programs that are offered in this field. It keeps it fresh. It keeps it possibilities of saving more lives. So my time as an executive director has helped me in many aspects, and one of those aspects is conflict resolution. So one example that I can give is when I was working at the Humane Society of Sedona. When I joined the Humane Society, previous to my arrival, several volunteers were terminated, and there was a community outcry saying that all the animals at the shelter were going to be euthanized. So that caused a lot of conflict within the community. And so I helped resolve that by being transparent with what the programs we were offering, what is no kill. I did town hall meetings and shared all of our statistics about what we were doing. And then I participated in professional mediation with the volunteers that had been terminated so that they felt heard and that I could hear what they had to say. They were no longer volunteers and they weren't going to be coming back, but I was still interested in what their experience was. We can learn from bad experiences, and I wanted to make sure that didn't happen again. So I went through a professional mediator to meet with those volunteers and to listen. So I think communication is the best way to resolve conflict, and that's how I do it, and I've done it in the past.
Thank you, Austin. Thank you. Emily, how many years of managerial executive experience have you had in the shelter industry, and how have they prepared you for the job you are seeking? You can start with that.
Yes, I've been in sheltering for about 10 years, managing for about 9. And like Austin, it's cumulative. And I think also, like Austin, my level of curiosity for what's new and what's next and what the current research is has also prepared me in order to help find answers for things that I don't know. And in terms of conflict resolution, I've worked some interesting places. Los Angeles now and San Francisco, it was not a great neighborhood. So the sort of community level conflict of maybe people aren't being their best selves. I think that greeting people with a calm demeanor and a confidence that I know what I'm doing. I do. I don't know everything, but I know what I'm doing and I know how to find the answers. And then speaking directly, transparently, and clearly, and listening a lot, because often when a conflict starts isn't the start of the conflict. It's months after a misunderstanding has happened. And it really takes a lot of hard listening to realize at the point the actual misunderstanding happened before the sort of narrative of what my intention might have been or what this other person's intention might have been. And really getting back to the root. And most things are misunderstandings. They really are. And we can learn to communicate better the next time and to not repeat those conflicts again and again.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that answered all of the questions there. Okay, so I'll go on to the next one. And Emily will get to answer first. Going back to rehabilitating dogs and dogs that are too dangerous for adoption and rescue, how will you work with outside groups to successfully rehabilitate dogs that might have specific behavioral or emotional needs beyond that which the shelter can provide? Because there are outside groups that are willing to help. And so could you address your willingness and how you would work with these outside groups for dog rehabilitation?
Yeah, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think that these problems will be lessened. There will be fewer numbers of these dogs if we are more proactive about keeping them in their homes. The intervention that I need to give an owner of a dog who's having a behavioral issue when that owner already loves that dog is so much less than taking that dog into the shelter where the stress is higher, their behavior becomes worse, and now we're trying to modify their behavior in an artificial environment for an unknown owner sometime, hopefully in the future, who hasn't even met them yet. That's an uphill battle. So when we do have those few uphill battles left, hopefully there's more bandwidth and creativity to be had. I think getting those animals into appropriate foster homes so that we can guide and make partnerships with community animal training groups, hook people up with online resources, or eventually, if it's deemed necessary, an in-house trainer or behavior expert, so that we can work on those behaviors and those needs in the real world, rather than trying to alter something in an environment that animal should never live in long term once they're adopted. I think I would really have to know the specifics of the groups necessary if they're asking for more resources from the shelter in terms of behavioral rehabilitation before placing the animal, or if they are interested in doing the rehabilitation themselves and getting different support from the shelter. But I think being really creative with those solutions, especially if we've kind of lessened the number of animals that need it. And I think shortening length of stay is a big step on lessening the number of animals that need a heroic lift in terms of behavior.
Oh, yeah. So just so you both are clear, the outside groups want to provide that training at no charge. Just so that was the
yes, that sounds great. I think there's probably some red tape because it's government. It's the government. So if there are creative ways around that as well, of transferring an animal to a rescue group, getting a memorandum of understanding in place that we could place an animal where it's easier for them to capitalize on those offers, but offer support or offer a place for the animal to come back should it not work out. I think it's about really creative thinking when we're talking about those last ditch dogs. Really, we're talking about that heroic effort when all other options have exhausted themselves.
Okay, great. Austin, would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure.
How will you work with outside groups? And these outside groups want to help provide, resources to successfully rehabilitate dogs that might have specific behavioral or emotional needs beyond that which the shelter can provide. And we do have big issues like that at this shelter historically. So it is something that will need to be addressed.
Okay. So how will we work with rescue groups or with outside groups? So
outside groups.
So this is something that I have done in the past. I'm not sure why it's not being done here, but in past organizations, before an animal is euthanized, it's what pathways have we not considered yet? And one of those pathways is outside groups. So whether it's rescue groups or, whoever, sanctuaries, something that might be able to provide a live outcome for that animal. So, in euthanasia decisions that I've made in the past, they've all been made with groups of people. At San Diego Humane Society, we had a member of the behavior team, the medical team, kennel staff, guest services. We all worked together to make sure that nothing was forgotten and that everything was tried. So I think that's a really good way to go. I'm not quite sure why it's not happening at Broward. And something else that we did at Humane Society of Sedona that was helpful is we had a foster parent that was kind of our test house. And she did not have any other pets. She didn't have any kids. She knew what she was getting into, and she knew she was testing dogs to see if they were going to be safe. And so I would say the majority of them excelled in a home. So it was a nice opportunity to do that. But this volunteer was very level-headed, and she knew that not every one of these dogs was going to make it. So when she had to come back, and it happened a few times, to just said, this dog was scary and I was afraid. And, she was a highly trained volunteer, so we respected her opinion. So, that was a nice opportunity for us to just try one more thing to have the animal in a home. So I think trying everything you can is always good.
Thank you. I'm going to go on to the next question. This next question has a brief introduction so that you can understand the background of why we're asking this question, and then I'm going to give you the question. So here's the introduction. Over the past few years, the shelter has tried not to euthanize animals. However, the rate of adoptions at the shelter had not kept up with the number who needed good homes, and this resulted in overcapacity and reduced quality of care. Basically, it was hoarding, animal hoarding. In some cases, the shelter has stopped or curtailed animal intake to the potential detriment of these animals. In other words, when the shelter got too crowded, they would just stop intaking animals or had put up all these roadblocks. So that's the background. That's the reality of recent history. So our question is, what would be your plan to increase the number of animals adopted each month? So how would you increase the number of animals adopted each month so that the shelter's capacity for care is not exceeded while the shelter can continue to intake animals without constraints? In other words, move them in, get them out, move them in, get them out. That sort of, how do we make that happen? Because that has been a historic problem at the shelter. So who's next? Oh, Austin, you're first. Thank you, Austin, if you would answer.
Okay, so increase adoptions. Love this stuff. So there's so many great things to implement to increase adoptions. One thing we did at San Diego Humane Society, we implemented monthly adoption events. So we just made stuff up. Black Cat Friday, we had fun. Each team decided what the event would be, and then the marketing team promoted it, made a cute flyer. And so really just finding ways to get the word out and to promote special adoptions, to incentivize people to come in and, waive adoptions on brown dogs, waive adoptions on whatever it is, just to get people excited and talking to come in. So that's one thing. Fee-waived adoption events are great. You already have the okay to do that at Broward County, which is awesome. Fee-waived adoptions really work. Working on the adoption process to make sure that it's conversational, it's friendly, that we're not putting up any barriers to the adoption process ourselves. So removing the adoption contract, having the matchmakers have a conversation with the adopters to make sure that they are getting the kind of animal they're looking for, but, remove the landlord checks, the vaccination checks, all those kinds of barriers put in place that limit adoptions. For cats, start a barn cat program for cats that maybe cannot go back to where they came from and return to field. So starting, a barn cat program is always fun. What else? Oh my gosh, there's so many fun things. You know, working on the messaging in the shelter, working on kennel cards to make sure that it's really, every animal has a little bio that's on their kennel that kind of sells them about what their personality is. So I love to see kennel cards that are really fun and engaging and tell a story about the animal. You know, make sure we have good hours that are accessible for people to come in to adopt. Adoption events. I love that I think there's 16 offsite adoption locations for cats. That's so fantastic. There's a lot of opportunities to increase adoptions, and that's one of my favorite things to do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was very thorough, and I'm sure you could keep talking about that. But now we're going to move on to Emily. Hi, Emily.
Hi. Yes, I like a lot of the same programs that Austin referenced. I think the waived adoptions, really removing barriers to adopt. And I've seen reference to similar barriers with foster and with registering as a rescue group. So all of those things of really trusting your community to adopt, foster, and transfer an animal. I think those are all really important. I think a lot of what I've talked about already about limiting intake. I'm not saying turning away animals that need to come in, but limiting intake by providing support that would keep animals in their existing home, or providing support to get them back to their existing home should they be lost. All of those things will kind of limit that hoarding feeling in the shelter, so that finding more adopters, you're not constantly swimming upstream trying to find more and more adopters. One really, I think, important thing, looking at the shelter population, particularly of short-coated, blocky-headed, chonky dogs, that those must be very popular in Broward County. Probably more popular to have and own, and maybe to even accidentally have litters of, than it is to adopt them. So where are they coming from, and how can we get them back into their neighborhoods where they're already a popular kind of dog that's well loved, instead of instead of really pitching them to people who are adopters, and they came in looking for a poodle and I tried to give them an 80-pound pit pack dog, which I will do. I think it's the right dog for you. So I think increasing adoptions, and of course, when we have fewer animals, we get to know their personalities better, their individual personalities better. We get to do all that background investigation that we talked about in talking about their behavior, and getting to know how they were in a previous home, so that we can talk to people honestly about how they've been in foster homes and in their previous homes, or even when they were found by a Good Samaritan, so that we can have biographies and kennel cards that really do reflect their individuality, instead of looking at 4 brown dogs in a kennel that are all barking, and we know who they are, and we can put them on Facebook and Instagram and talk about them. I really like adoption events, even though we're not allowed to have events in the world right now. I do like to have events, and maybe there are some good ways to do them virtually, some virtual I don't know, doggy costume parties. We missed the opportunity just now, but I really like the community building that happens with an event. It increases the goodwill with the community, even for those people who come and don't end up adopting. So I do like that kind of engagement.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you. I'm sure you could talk more about that. So in the interest of time, we'll move to the next question. A major issue at our shelter has been staff. Oh, this will be Emily, I'm sorry, but you're next since we're rotating. So you're going to answer this one first. A major issue at our shelter has been staff and volunteer morale. A successful shelter needs both a dedicated staff and a dedicated volunteer base. And it needs them to work together harmoniously. They need to be able to work together harmoniously, and sometimes they don't, apparently. What would you do to increase morale and improve the working relationship between the staff and the volunteers?
So compassion fatigue is real. Being caring and absorbing the trauma of the animals and the people who have been separated from their animals. As a career, as a volunteer, it's really hard. And we are seeing sort of the saddest stories often. And our little like lizard brains are so attuned to danger that those stories really stand out. And it's very easy to remember the names and faces of every dog that I've had to sign off for euthanasia. And I have no idea how many kittens I've successfully placed in homes, but it's thousands, and I don't have happy stories in my head for all of them. So I think a really important thing to do is to remind people daily, and in monthly we do, because I promise you, no matter how bad you feel about the shelter now, even the most cranky person who's listening to this call right now, the shelter has done amazing work. They've made families, they've saved lives. And we're not talking about those individual stories enough because of the ones that we can't save. And those really stand out as problems, but really to remind ourselves daily about how much successes we have and to come together under those. So we might not be successfully working together, volunteers and staff, in every component of the shelter, but there are components that I think do. I saw a new old volunteer, a volunteer in the shelter today who just redone her paperwork. And she was thrilled that the shelter is open and happy to be there. How is she happy in her program working well? How can we bottle that and keep it going? Is it because there's great communication? I bet communication is good with her. And so we need to go back to, I think it was question number 1, and work on communication, but also to celebrate our successes. Because I promise you, there's 61 people on here right now. I promise you've all had really amazing successes in working with the shelter.
Thank you. Thank you, Emily. Austin, do you want me to reread it?
Sure.
A major issue at our shelter has been staff and volunteer morale. A successful shelter needs both a dedicated staff and a dedicated volunteer base, and it needs them to work together harmoniously. So the issue has been morale of staff, morale of volunteers, and the relationship between staff and volunteers. Sometimes there's issues between staff and volunteers. So what would you do to increase morale and improve the working relationship between staff and volunteers?
Okay. Well, I think it starts with expectations, so that everybody has a good job description that's clear with expectations. I think what happens with when there's a breakdown is that the volunteers are maybe expecting staff to do something, the staff are expecting volunteers to do something, and their expectations are not met. So clear expectations and job descriptions, good training, and a culture from the top down, and that would start from the director, of supporting and welcoming volunteers. And I employ a system of, it's the old-fashioned management by walking around. So I'm visible, I'm on the floor, I get to know volunteers, and I chat with them, and I encourage the staff to chat with them. You got to get to know the volunteers. We started at an organization I was at, we started a training program so that the new incoming volunteers were partnered up with a staff member, a buddy, and they did the training. And during that partnership, the staff was encouraged to talk to the volunteer, get to know them. And by getting to know them, you create a bond. You realize, oh my gosh, I didn't know you had Siamese cats. I do too, and you create these bonds that then you're able to overcome obstacles when they may arrive. Another thing I did, at Humane Society of Sedona, where there were some issues with volunteers, I remember when I went for my first tour of that shelter, I went to the staff break room, and it was the only break room. There was only one, and there was a big sign that said staff only. And I just was like, wow, that's a barrier to a good relationship. So I got the little scraper out and I scraped that off. And I put the volunteer Volgistic sign in the break room so that the staff and the volunteers had to get together every day and say, hi, how are you this morning? And to start those conversations and to create a good working relationship. So, you know, I just think it stops from the top down, and it, you know, it's like any other relationship. You've got to work at it. And I think it's very possible.
Thank you, Austin. I'm going to go to the next question now. This one has to do with the county spay-neuter program. So I'm going to give you a little introduction. The county requires all dog and cat owners to purchase a pet rabies registration tag each year. The cost of the tag ranges from about $20 to $60, depending on the type of pet and whether it's sterilized. The proceeds from these sales fund the county's spay-neuter and adoption program. So let's focus on spay-neuter since we have very little funding for it. The only funding source for the spay-neuter program is selling these registration tags. Unfortunately, in the recent history, we have not been selling that many tags. We've not really been marketing it. We haven't really been enforcing it. And it's just sort of, that's why we don't have a whole lot of money. Well, how would you formulate, or what would you be your plan to increase pet rabies registration tags sales? And in your past positions, were you ever involved in successfully creating affordable or free spay and neuter programs? So in other words, our only funding source is these tags. How do we increase the tag sales? And what would you do? You know, how have you been involved in programs that successfully created affordable or free spay-neuter programs? So the whole spay-neuter funding and implementation. So that would be, who's first? I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to, yes, Austin, you're first, right? Yes.
Okay. So
Thank you.
I would say the first thing to do that, you know, I would try to implement or re-implement is reminders. We all pay a bill when we get the bill. So sending out reminders of, you know, it's due and send us the money this way. I'm not quite sure on the website if it's easy to purchase licenses online. If not, there are many software programs that facilitate that. So removing barriers. Also working with veterinary clinics. I do know that there are veterinary clinics around town that are selling licenses. So encourage those, you know, maybe they're not selling all of them. So some sort of incentive program or award that they sold the most licenses, something to get them encouraged to do it, because it is, you know, most veterinary clinics that sell these licenses, they make like $1 or something in other cities that I've worked at. So they don't have a lot of incentive to spend, you know, 15 minutes selling it and then doing the paperwork for $1. So we have to make it worth it for them. So those are some ways that I would recommend doing that. And you know, I do have experience starting spay-neuter programs and getting donors to support that, and you know, or finding creative ways to pay for it, because spay-neuter is so important to me. So, you know, if this is how the funding comes, then I certainly see a way to increase that.
Great, thank you, thank you, Emily.
Yeah, I think I'll take it kind of backwards. Yes, spay-neuter programs. I mostly have experience with growing in-house spay-neuter programs. So as Austin spoke earlier in the evening about wanting to do more spay-neuter for the community in-house, that is what I have the experience with. And I understand that the SNP program is vouchers for local vets, and that is how TNR is done as well. And I think that's a great resource for the community, which you're right, expanding it is so nice, and expanding it in a targeted way would be even nicer for the TNR, I would say, or for pity type dogs. And I think exploring other ways that within the budget constraints of the government that we're allowed to solicit grants. Spay neuter is a field in which grant funds are available across the country. I'm not saying that it's a huge amount, but supplementing that fund in other ways might be necessary. My experience with licensing and increasing licensing, I think sending out reminders is great. It sounds like, if I'm understanding the concern within the county correctly, that reminders were not sent out because data entry got really backed up. So that's something that we really need to find a creative solution to. If this is the funding for this and we don't have enough data entry staff to accomplish it in a way that we can keep the flow going, then we're a little bit imbalanced, right? So what does that look like? Is there anything that volunteers can assist with? Is there any staff that we can pull from elsewhere to assist with data entry to just get over the hump and catch up so that we can start sending reminders out again? My experience with really increasing licensing compliance has been with licensing canvassers, which were a paid position at my most recent shelter of people who really hung door tags and went door to door to remind people to renew their licenses when those reminders were not enough. And I do think that those were a valuable team member for community outreach. Really, I don't see it as necessary for Broward to have people devoted to licensing canvassing, but people in the community doing outreach, and that can be volunteers. Volunteers with a binder of all of our resources, going door to door in neighborhoods where we know there are dogs, but licensing compliance is low, to say, please renew your license. It'll help our spay neuter fund. You won't get a fine. And we can, if you need a dog house, this is the way to apply, those sorts of things. And really not killing two birds with one stone, but cutting two carrots with one knife.
Thank you, Emily. I appreciate that. Okay, so the next question, and Emily, you will begin. We do have about, I'll go a couple more questions, and then I'll have you all do a closing statement. You all are doing great, by the way. This is quite the grilling, and I appreciate the professionalism of both of you as you answer these questions. So this is the next one. This one you guys touched on. It's very important for the community. This is a very important issue for the community I'm about to talk about. Are you willing to be truthful to the county commission and the community as to what is needed to save more animals? This is a couple questions. It's all the same theme. Will you be transparent in the shelter's successes and failures so that the commission and the community have the information they need to help the shelter? In other words, we can't help you if you don't tell us the truth. Even if you fail, we just want the truth. Would you be willing to form a citizens advisory board or committee that meets monthly to discuss pressing issues and ways that the community and the county commission can help the shelter? And so that's it. That's the questions that we would like you to address. And so, Emily, you would be first if you would.
I don't know what to do apart from being truthful with you guys. It is too exhausting to try to lie. I couldn't keep it straight. It's a big woolly department, and I've got to be transparent. And in order to get the things done that you want one of us to do, we need your help. And that means asking for it and saying, I can't do this alone. And I am very willing to say that. I'll say it right now. I'm pretty sure I can't do this alone. Will you help me? And then a citizens advisory board. I really like the idea of having face-to-face time with different cohorts of people to really update them on what's going on and to listen to what they've heard and what their concerns are. So whether that is regular volunteer town halls and listening sessions, a citizens advisory board, expanded use of your group, Animal Care Advisory Committee, whatever we can do, and sitting down with the rescue groups once or twice or 4 times a year, just to make sure that all these different groups with different ideas of what the shelter needs to do, because they're serving different needs outside of the shelter walls, that we're really hearing all of those concerns and interests and providing you in return with all of the information on what we're working on. So yes, transparency now.
Thank you. Very good, Emily. Austin, if you would. You want me to ask it? Oh, I'm happy to
No, it's okay.
ask.
Will I be transparent and tell the truth? No. Just kidding. So yes, of course. I am all about transparency, open door policy. I know there's somebody on here that worked with me in a past shelter. I saw them in the chat or in the attendee list, so they will know about this. It's called a Cosmo. I came up with this idea. It's called a Cosmo memo. It's abbreviation, communication to save more lives, save more time, save more money. So this was a way of communicating with all the staff and all the volunteers about changes or new things that were happening at the shelter, because communication is so key. If you only volunteer one day a week, or you're a part-time staff member and you only work a couple days a week, things are going to change while you're gone, and you need to keep updated on those. So this Cosmo memo was a format where it had a change, the change name, whatever it was, new litter boxes, whatever is the change. What's the reason for the change? Why are we doing it? What do we hope to achieve? So what's the purpose, which I'm all about, tell me why you want to do this. So what's the purpose, when it's going to start, and who's involved? And then, so before anything happens, these Cosmo memos I have sent out, and to all the staff, get them email, and then they're posted throughout the shelter for volunteers and staff. And on the back of the memo is a place for comments, like, I really like the new litter boxes, but I wish they were blue, whatever. It's a place for, return conversation about whatever the change is, because not every change is going to be perfect. Not every change is going to work. And I need to hear what's not working so that we can make adjustments. But we still need to keep moving forward and make changes and improvements. So Cosmo Memo is something that I started several years ago, and it's been really, really successful in keeping everybody informed. So yes, transparency, and yes to truth, always, even if it hurts. So the last part of the question was the advisory committee, and I'm all for whatever committees are needed, and the key word is needed. So there's only so much time in the day, and meetings eat up time. They just do. So if there's different ways to communicate and to get the information out there, like joining your group that's already established, if that's a possibility, I'm for that, is consolidating and using the time most efficiently to so everybody can get done what they need to get done. So, but absolutely, I'm always available to talk.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, and then I think this will be the last question, and Austin will start. All right. The kennel staff do an outstanding job maintaining the dog area and ensuring all animals are safe, fed, and clean. These tasks require numerous hours to complete, leaving only a short amount of time per shift for addressing the emotional and social needs of the animals. How will you ensure all dogs are given the individual attention that they deserve on a daily basis? Austin, if you would begin.
And first, let me say, I'm going to fight for the cats and say we're going to give the cats the attention they deserve as well.
Okay, both dogs and cats. Okay.
So, that's where volunteers come in. I mean, there's only so many hours in the day. Everything takes time. And to do it right, it takes even more time. So, I would hope that the volunteer program would come back together quickly, and that we can ramp up all of these programs to help enrich the lives of the animals during their stay. And I think training, people probably don't know that by walking through the dog kennel, walking past dogs with other dogs, really causes stress for both dogs. So, how can we change that? And, I think there's opportunities to just look at how hard are we closing the kennel gates? Are we whistling? And maybe that's too loud. What are we doing that we could maybe change our behavior and change what we're doing to help make the animals more comfortable? So, I mean, those are just absolutes for me. I feel those though the animals are guests, and that, I look at dogs in the kennels or cats and I picture my own pet. And, I see a dog in a kennel without a blanket, and my dog would probably die without a blanket. So I have empathy for them, and I want them to be as comfortable as I know that somebody would care for my animal if they happen to be in the shelter.
Great. Thank you. Emily?
Yeah, I'm afraid that I'm going to answer this question the same way I've answered several of the other questions, is we can have fewer dogs in the shelter. There are ways to keep dogs in their homes and ways to get dogs to their new homes faster or into foster homes faster, so that it frees up some staff time to do more of this work. And then, of course, enrichment is the best thing for volunteers to do. I say that there will be staff time to do it because I know that staff would love to be able to do it. They would love to not only pick up the dog's poop, but also get to take him for playtime. But I think an enrichment program can be completely volunteer run. I also think that having systems in place, that Mondays are Sunbetter on Frisbee Day, and Tuesdays are Through a Dog's Ear Day, and Wednesday, so that it's not a huge amount of lift to decide what the best thing is to do on a given day. Wherever we can automate systems and have just a checklist to follow, it's more likely to get done. And that all dogs get X every day. To make sure that those things are met, and that when those checklists aren't filled, that's brought to somebody's attention so that we can figure out what the barriers are to animals being appropriately enriched. And I'm with Austin. The cats deserve it too. I live with bunnies, so they would rather I not play with them.
Okay. Thank you, Emily. That was our last question. To all of you in the public who provided questions that I did not get to, I apologize for that due to time. I think we got a lot of really good information from our two candidates. I think they did an excellent job and were very professional, and they handled the grilling very well. But I will give each an opportunity. We don't have much time, 1 minute each, or maybe over a minute each, if you want to say any closing remarks. I'll start with Austin to give Emily a break, and just some closing remarks, whatever you want to say, and then we'll close for the evening. Okay, Austin.
Okay. Well, I just want to say that I've been so impressed with the staff that I've met here, and I'm so impressed with the community that you have this many people that would spend an evening that are interested in who's going to be running the shelter. So I'm very, very impressed with the level of commitment and how much the community cares about the animals. So I love that. And I just want everybody to know that, I've worked in shelters around the country, and the programs that Broward is offering, that's offering right now, many of them are so progressive, and I mean, you could do a talk at the next, association conference about all of the progressive programs that are already being done at Broward. So I think you really need to pat yourselves on the back and say, wow, we're doing good work here. We're trying new things, and you should be proud of yourselves. So I think you're on the path to good and better things coming up.
Hey, thank you, Austin. Emily, any last words?
Yeah, I'll just echo that. Thank you all for coming out. I am likewise impressed that that this community is so passionate and so devoted to the animals to give up 2 hours of your evening to listen to all my opinions. And I'm happy to give you 2 more hours of opinions on animal sheltering anytime you want. If you guys want to, my email address is on my LinkedIn page. I see that some of you have already looked. Just so you're welcome to follow up any questions, and I'm really happy to see you all. And no matter if you see Austin's face here or mine in the future, I'm pretty sure we're going to want to work alongside you and really need your assistance as we land in Broward and figure out the lay of the land. And the people who just gave up 2 hours of their time are the kind of people I want passing out Kongs in the shelter.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Emily. And thank you, everyone. This concludes our town hall meeting. I thought it was very successful and informative, and I thank everyone for participating. And you all have a great night and a great rest of the week and weekend. Bye-bye.